We have 4 guest speakers today at these sessions, and we are starting with our guest speaker, Professor Gabrielle Dracke. She is interim dean of the School of the Social Sciences of West Sydney University, and the title of the speech, Intersecting Injustice, Gender Violence, and the Criminalizations of CALD. And CALD is an abbreviation of Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Women in Australia. So let's go quickly for the bio or the resume for Professor Gabrielle. She is an Associate Dean, Engagements of Professor of School of Social Sciences of Western Sydney University. She is a recognized expert in social policy, mental health, disability, housing, and homelessness, by the way. Her research focuses on inclusive and emancipatory methodologies, social work practices in mental health and disability, and lived experience in marginalization populations. With over 25 years of practice experience, Professor Dracke has held diverse roles across community and public sectors management, strategy, policy, and research. She has contributed extensively to graduate and postgrad social works education and committed to amplifying consumers and career voice. I'm sorry that I have to shorten a little bit, no, Professor Gabrielle, but you have the board now. Okay.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to stand or sit?
You have 15 minutes, please. Okay, go ahead.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I might just start by acknowledging country as well. So I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Eora, Darug, Tharawal peoples, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to any First Nations friends in the room. Amira, thank you very much for providing the slide this morning in English and your speech in English. But as you were speaking in Arabic, people may have seen I had a big smile on my face, and I'll tell you why. When we first met, I shared that I grew up in Auburn and I studied in Bankstown, and I think for me, when I hear our Arabic language, it reminds me of home. And that's mixed, yeah? You'll appreciate in the communities that I grew up, beautiful food, beautiful cultures, generous people, beautiful cultures, but also lots of challenges. I grew up in a space where there was lots of community violence, where we had the riot squad probably every second day in our street. And so it is a real privilege to be here today. And I love what you said at the end of your speech about let's get to work. So today is about listening deeply to one another. We're up the front here. We might have some different letters before or after our names, but we're no more important than everyone here is here for a reason, because we want to celebrate cultures. We want people to be safe and to grow and to thrive in their families and in their communities. What I want to talk about today is a project that, and I did promise our kind interpreter that I would try not to speak too quickly, but I've probably failed already. What I want to talk about today is really just to give a bit of a high-level insights into one of the studies that myself and colleagues have done recently. And really it's looking at the experiences of culturally and linguistically diverse women, their pathways into prison, their experiences in prison, and what it means when they leave prison. Just in terms of context, I know many people in the room would be aware of this, but we have in New South Wales about 16% of people in prison are from culturally and linguistically diverse background. We know that about 8% of the total prison population are women, and of that, about 13% are women from culturally and linguistically diverse background. And what we do know is that those women and Indigenous women are the fastest growing number, or the fastest growing people that are incarcerated in our state. Why did we want to do this study? We know that, research tells us that the experiences of called women are distinctly different from those in the rest of the prison population, and that their pathways to imprisonment and the barriers and challenges they face are specific to those experiences. Just in the spirit of time, I might move through a little bit quickly through some of these slides. Was it easy getting into the prison? No. Myself and my colleague, Dr. Rimple Mata, worked with corrective services for probably about 18 months to talk with them about why we wanted to do this important study and for them to support us to gain access into women's prisons. We had, just in terms of the methods of the study, we did 27 individual interviews with women aged between 19 and 69, and we had interpreters at the prison with us in person as well as phone interpreters. I could speak a lot about that as well, as you can imagine, in the prison context with constant announcements happening, and it was quite disruptive and difficult. We did some multi-stakeholder focus groups with corrective services staff, community organisations, health services, and importantly with women with lived experience, women advocates. We also did an anonymous survey with corrective services staff, so across staff in prisons as well as staff in central office functions, about their understanding of the experiences of called women, about what did they know about what had been the pathway, what had led women to come into prison. So I just wanted to talk through some of the key things that we found in terms of pathways to prison. We heard from the women and corrective services staff and health and community organisation staff that women faced significant racism and bullying at school, and this meant that many young women leave school early, and that impacts their education, is disrupted, their employment prospects, and very often will lead them on a pathway to contact with the criminal justice system. One of the really distinct findings of this study, which we found particularly important to highlight, was some of the reasons why particularly so many of the women that we spoke with in prison were the eldest child in their family. And there were particular expectations placed upon them within their family, both here in Australia but also back home, about providing. So when families were experiencing poverty, there was this expectation placed on the elder sibling, in this case these women, to financially provide for their family. And often that had led them into situations where they were committing crime to provide financially for their family. As we've heard already this morning, so many of these women had experienced all sorts of violence, all sorts of abuse: domestic, intimate partner, workplace abuse, child abuse, religious persecution, state-inflicted violence. And they also talked about their challenges in trying to reach out for help, and in particular, trying to work with police to flee violence, to leave violence. One woman said, "I did try to contact police 3 times. They just didn't want to do anything about it. Before the assault, I was happy to sit in my own unit and I felt safe. But after that, no, everything just changed for me. I went to supplying drugs. The syndicate that I was with protected me more than the police." So in this case, Jemima felt that she had more protection from the members of the gang that she was affiliated with than police. The women talked about difficulties navigating laws and systems, and in particular the role of language. Of course, the language barrier was a big problem. If you don't speak the language, of course, you will not know the law. How am I going for time?
No, it's okay.
Okay. I wanted to just now touch on a couple of the really key things that women spoke to us about in terms of their experiences when they were in prison. Central to women's everyday experiences in prison, their participation in programs and services and their ability to maintain relationships with family and friends outside prison is their access to interpreter services. Yes, in terms of corrective services New South Wales, so in prisons there is a requirement for women, in this case, to have access to interpreter services. But what I want to highlight, and what we are highlighting with our corrective services colleagues, is to really shine a light on that this is not happening in practice. I won't go into some of the really awful stories that we heard, but women not getting access to life-saving treatment. You know, not because language was a barrier, not being able to tell someone that they needed screening, that they needed treatment, and in some cases it became too late. We certainly heard from a lot of the women around the solidarity of women and the generosity of women supporting each other in trying to translate and to try and support each other to access services. But of course we know that when it comes to accessing legal and health services, privacy is a very central issue, and that whilst women are supportive of one another, you need access to interpreter services. 5 minutes, all right, I'll get going. I will just highlight that significant issues, if I thought about the three big issues for women in prison, it's the access to interpreter services, it's the access to mental health services. This is the trauma that these women have experienced and continue to experience is profound, and they simply are not getting any access, or very, very limited access. We went and did these interviews during COVID times, and I think that we were the first person that some of the women had spoken with, about their life, about their circumstances in probably 6 or more months. Some of the women were getting access to psychologists maybe 6 minutes every 6 to 12 months, okay? And when you think about some of their experiences of trauma, this isn't good enough. The importance of maintaining contact with family and community, this would be another big issue that I want to highlight today. And this was of course linked to the ability to access language, to be able to tell someone that you wanted to have contact with your children. In some cases, women were incarcerated and their children weren't told until some time later that mum just disappeared. In the remaining few minutes, I just wanted to highlight some recommendations that we're putting forward from the report. Certainly the need for multilingual, accessible information throughout the whole prison journey, the whole prison experience. The need for training for staff about how to access and how to work with interpreters. The need for cultural diversity training for our correctional officers. The need to increase staff diversity. This is a really big issue. The need for called women to be a part of different committees within the prisons and within corrective services. The need for culturally informed mental health and alcohol and other drug services, and that all women have access to case management services. We have a big issue in our state around women who are on remand. Most women are on remand, and that means that they're not getting access to a lot of these services. So we're advocating very strongly on this. One of the other things, just quickly, that we're advocating from Western Sydney University is to try and work closely with corrective services to provide social work support within women's prisons. So for our students, social work students, to go into prisons and for us to provide that support. I'll leave it there, but thank you very much for being here today and for the invitation to speak.
Thank you.